Hello, I'm Andy, and today I want to talk about the worst cards in Age of Empires 3. In Age of Empires 3 there are a lot of bad cards, and of course this is opinion based, but these cards take the cake of being the worst cards. Because even though most of these cards don't actively harm you when sending them, there's always a better alternative than sending these cards. But without further introduction, let's jump right into the top list. So, starting with the best worst card in my opinion, the Piece of Münster, which is a Dutch H1 card, which sends one envoy, and now envoys can construct military building and trading posts. This card saves some villager seconds in the early game and allows in the late game for funny and sneak attacks. Overall, it seems very mediocre, especially considering you would need villagers at the front in late game to build towers and walls anyway. This can be mitigated by using the H4 fort card, which allows your explorer to construct outposts and forts. So you would technically maybe only need envoys and your explorer to push your base forward. But then again, in late game you always need walls, so you cannot really skip the villager. To make it completely viable, your envoys should be able with this card to construct walls and towers, so you would skip completely the need for forward villagers with Dutch. This also would mean that you can keep your 64 villagers, which you can get with the H4 politician with Dutch. This would make your economy around 5% better, which is a huge advantage to be honest. But it doesn't, so this card is pretty bad. So let's get into the next card. Next up on the list we have the Advanced Estates card. The Advanced Estates card increases the estate's HP and reduces the cost by 200 wood. And it also allows the estates to be built in H1. HP on estates doesn't really matter, because when your estates are attacked, you mostly lost anyway, in 90% of the time. And if you're being raided, the estates are not the target of the attack of the raid, but rather the villagers, which are working on the estates. 200 wood per estate saving means you need to build around 4 estates for this card to be better than an H2 wood shipment. In late game, in total you save a maximum of 2000 wood with this card, or which is the case if you build 10 estates. In this scenario, a wood shipping card is almost always better. For this card to be decent, it either needs to give a gathering bonus, or it would have to allow villagers to being garrisoned in the estate, similar to haciendas. Then there might be an option or a scenario where this could be worth it in Supremacy. On number 8 we have the Advanced Mills, which is basically like Advanced Estates, only worse because it doesn't reduce the age restriction. Next on the list we have the Zen Diet card of Japanese. The Zen Diet card is an H2 card which replaces the food cost of your villagers with a cost of 60 wood. So this card is bad because Japanese are stretched for wood early and the cost reduction is enough to justify putting it in. It's a bad medicine type card, which doesn't reduce the train time of villagers. And medicine type cards in general are only used in niche cases anyway. This card could be improved by also granting train time reduction, like similar medicine cards. Even with this buff though, the card would still be bad, because early game you're stretched for wood because it competes with shrines, and putting in a boom card means you either send it when you are already winning, or you send it instead of another boom card, which is almost always worse, because there are just better boom cards with Japanese, for example for villagers or the Heavenly Kami card. Next on the list, number 6, we have the Akinji's card for Ottomans. With this card, your cavalry archers deal 100% more damage to villagers. It makes cavalry archers a lot better in situations where you typically don't use them. Raiding with CA is just not common, and sending an H3 card to make it somewhat viable is not worth it, since it is countered very easily by some walls. It feels like you're always better off just making hussars if you want to raid. This card would be decent if it also gives an increase to overall attack of cav archers, something like 10 to 20%. But then you would have to see if it makes cav archers in late game maybe too strong, because there are a lot of cards buffing CA anyway. Next on the list we have Florence Nightingale, which is a British H2 card, which gives your houses the effect that they heal nearby units. Healing in Age of Empires 3 is not useful in a lot of scenarios, because army sizes quickly reach a point where it is impractical to pull single units back and heal them up. Also the high value units usually cannons, are hard to keep alive, and oftentimes you would only start to retreat once these are dead, and then you can't heal them up. Healing on houses also means you have to go back and stay close to your base until your units are healed, or spend a lot of action filtering out the weak units and sending them back. This is also might be counterproductive, because even a 1 HP unit does full damage. Especially ranged units stay alive surprisingly long, even with little HP, if the enemy is not specifically alt microing. Another downside to this card is that it's an H2 card, which is filled in a British deck with cards, since the game plan with British typically involves staying long in H2 and apply a lot of pressure and or to boom. This card is also useless in late game, since you would rather retrain your units than keep them idle for long. So how can you make this card better or at least usable? My best idea is that in addition to the effect, you get an Padre healing unit. So the Padre is the Mexican hero healing unit. Or alternatively, you could also enable them to train priests with a limit of 5 and at a highly reduced cost. On number 4, we have the Transform Your Villagers into Military card. There are several, but I will just talk about the worst. So for me, the worst is again a Japanese card, and it's Japanese's 47 Ronin. This costs as much as a Revolution. It basically is the same as a Revolution, but it's even more all-in than a Revolution. Yes, you heard right, you can get more all-in than Revolution. It's actually possible in Age of Empires 3. So this card transforms all your villagers and shrines into masterless samurai guardians, and castles into Woku Ronins, and wonders and TCs into the regular Ronins. So with this card, you sacrifice all your economy, wonders and castles to get some melee infantry. It can be used to finish the game, and you will get roughly 70 to 100 melee infantry units. Sounds decent, right? So first off, with regular revolutions, you typically get musketeer type units, which are infinitely better than melee infantry units in 99% of the cases. So that's the first downside of this revolution. The second downside is, with Japan, if you reach age 4 and you're boomed, you're often in a very comfortable position where you can just boom endless amount of Ashigarus. So the last thing you typically want to do is to transform all your game-winning advantages into some all-in strategy. So first of all, you wouldn't include this card because it's not your game-winning strategy to go for an all-in H4 push. And second, you're in a good position, and this card puts you in most of the times in a worse position. So it's just a very, very bad card. Another big downside of this revolution is that you're losing basically all your home city shipments. So because you're losing your TCs, that means you can only receive shipments if you have a daimyo. Other than that, you are kind of all in. You also really don't have any way to go back. So if you don't have a daimyo, there's no going back. You send this card, you finish, or you lose. So, I mean, not all cards have to be super competitive. I think this card can be fun, and I see the fun side to it. I mean, to make it viable, there are a few options. So for example, the unit or the buildings shouldn't transform into the unit, but rather let them spawn the units. So this would mean that you don't sacrifice your home shipment point, and you can still do something because you still have population. So that would be an option, and that would give you the option to at least recover a bit. So maybe the TCs and Wonder spawning Ronins might be a bit broken. It might be necessary to make them also spawn Woku Ronins, so these guardians. Then it could be okay, and it could be still a fun card to use. In the current state, I wouldn't use this card ever if I want to win the game. If I'm just having fun against bots, I might use it. Other than that, I would just stay away from it. So before we get into the top 3, so the podest, the guys winning the cake of being the worst cards in the game, let's just talk about some honorable mentions. So there are a few cards which I think they are pretty bad, but also there might be some niche case where they might be okay, but also most of these cards could have also just been on the list. Okay, so basically let's go over the honorable mentions. So the first one is the Call to Arms. It's an Indian H2 card. Lose buildings, then get town militia. I mean, if you're losing buildings, then getting Town Militia won't help you much usually, so I don't see it very useful in a lot of scenarios. Then we have the advanced market, which just gives better market rates. I don't see many people abusing the market as heavy. And then, do you really want to send this card, or do you want to maybe send some card which gives you the resource which you need? Yeah, questionable. I don't know. So Master Surgeons. So these are basically better priests. So how about expensive priests? Are you sold? I'm not. And the last card I want to mention, the Leather Soldiers, which is a Mexican H3 card, which changes the coin cost of your military to wood, and if you send it again, it changes it back. So with this card, you basically increase the cost of your units for only the small cost of a shipment. I'm not very sold on this idea, but maybe there's a use case which I'm not seeing. So yeah. Now let's jump into the top 3. First off, we have the Warrior Culture, which is an H4 native card, so how the Haudenosaunee, Lakota and Aztecs can send this card. And this card gives your villagers plus 20 attacks, and that means they do as much damage as an H2 Musketeer. So what is the idea of this card? You use your villagers to attack and finish the game. So when you are in H4, you have around 50 villagers maybe. And so with this card you get 40 more H2 Musketeers in a fight. In an H4 fight where you have cannons and you have around 200 population typically. So does that really make a huge difference? I would say no. And especially if you have to sacrifice your eco for it. Maybe is it to deflect raids? But then again, when you are in H4, you usually deal with H3 raids, and how scary are H2 Musketeers against H3 or H4 raids? I would say they are not very scary. So I haven't seen this card used ever, and I don't see a situation where this card would be useful. To make it useful, maybe you could move it to H2, so that would enable some crazy all-in timings. Maybe. So then maybe this card could be fun. But even then, I don't think it's good. I don't usually think that it's a good idea to transform your economy into military. It's just not a good decision in most RTS, in 99% of the cases. Okay, so let's talk about the second worst card, in my opinion. So this card is the Niños Heroes. It's a Mexican H3 card, and this card... So with this card, every time your hero is knocked out, a militia spawns. So with this card, in total, you will get around 5 militiamen in a game, which also additionally spawn alone, and that's for an H3 card. So for me, this seems completely useless. I don't even see how you could make this useful. So yeah, I mean, if your hero dies, then just alone the militia spawns and helps you defend against a push of 20 musketeers. I don't see the point in this card. To make it useful, maybe it should be 5 militiamen, so there would at least be some sort of defense if you lose your hero. That could be okay, but maybe with the ransom ability that could also be a bit broken. I don't know, but in this way it's just useless. I don't see the point. But guys, this is not the worst card in the game right now, in my opinion. In my opinion, the single worst card in this game again goes to Japanese, and it is the Azekura card. So with this card, your shrine HP is increased by 20%. So why is this card bad? So no one even uses the advanced buildings card, which gives 40% to all buildings. So why would anyone ever use, or so why would anyone consider sending 20% HP on shrines? I don't see it. Like there's no scenario where I think this card is justified. And also it was added recently, so it feels like a middle finger to all the Japanese players. And because the Shrines HP got nerfed like 100 times already, and now they add this card into it and say, yeah, hey, we nerfed the HP, but I mean, you get something in return, like this useless card you can send, and then it's like before. So, yeah. To make it all worse, it's an age 2 card, which is always an age where there are a lot of cards competing in this age, so you wouldn't use it. It's also only useful for Supremacy, where you also might need a lot of age 2 cards. And yeah, so at this stage I would not include this ever. I think this game would be the same if this card was just deleted. I mean, this card is just useless. There's no point with this card. It's not any fun. It's not good. It's useless. Maybe some noob will test it and he will fail because it's a bad card. So I don't know. To make it somewhat useful, there could be a few options. So my ideas would be maybe this card could give 100% HP on shrines or 50%. I mean, you have to remember 40% HP on buildings also isn't used. So maybe 100% on one single building is okay. I mean, you still have to send a shipment, and a shipment is a huge investment early in the game. Or an alternative is that it gives a bit of wood back when the shrines are destroyed. In both cases, I don't think I would use this card, but then it at least would be somewhat okay, I guess. So these are just my opinions. What are the worst cards in your opinion? Did I miss a few? And have I misjudged a few cards? Then just let me know in the comments. And yeah, so thanks for watching and see you guys around. Bye bye.